In your issue of December 17, you announced that the BBC proposes to spend over £4 million over the next 3 years on the development of television. I have just returned from a visit to the United States, where television has become an habitual form of entertainment in many more households than here. Among persons of my own acquaintance, I found only anxiety and apprehension about the social effects of this pastime, and especially about its effect, mentally, physically, and morally, upon small children. Before we endeavour to popularise it still further in this country, might it not be as well if we investigated its consequences for American society and took counsel with informed American opinion about possible safeguards and limitations? The fears expressed by my American friends were not such as could be allayed by the provision of only superior and harmless programmes. They were concerned with the television habit, whatever the programme might be. T.S. Elliot, 24 Russell Square, WC1.
Quite.
This book is a must-read for Christmas. Every Christmas stocking should have one. It's called Sir, The Year in Letters. It costs £9.99. It's available from all good bookshops, and it's less if you're a Times Plus member. So I would strongly encourage you to go and buy it. My name is Andrew Riley. I'm the letters editor. I put it together, but I can't take any credit for all the words of wisdom in it. There we are.
Well, could you start off by telling me what you're going to be regaling the audience with today in your talk here at Cheltenham Literature Festival?
Well, Hannah, I am regaling the audience with 75 years' worth of letters to the Times, which covers social and political change, but mainly, I think, social, because it's more fun.
And we'll come on to some of the letters in a moment, but have you noticed in that time a sort of change in the way people write? There's a lot of talk at the moment about an age of kind of anxiety or angst or outrage. Do you notice it getting more angry?
No, not really. I mean, the people who write to the Times are, by and large, very well educated, and they write nicely, and they express their opinions in a nice form. It's robust, but it is polite, and I think that is the mark of civilised discourse, polite but robust debate.
And you feel like it's stayed very similar in terms of the way people...
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, in the olden days, people used fancier words. They possibly had a larger vocabulary. But they would, yes, I would say it's still courteous debate.
Courteous debate. And about very different subject matters over the years, obviously, but have the sorts of things that people see fit to write in about changed hugely?
No. As you'll see when I go through them, overcrowding on public transport remained a problem in the 50s, or was a problem in the 1950s, still a problem today. British manners abroad, hoodlums, drunks, that was bothering people in the 50s and 60s, still a problem today. So, no, by and large, the same sort of things. Human nature is the same. The times change, but human nature doesn't.
Interesting. It's so interesting to hear that, because you imagine things might have changed hugely and the sorts of things that anger people now are very different, but you're noticing a very different thing.
I would say, yeah, there are broad parallels, and most of the letters I've picked out have some sort of resonance with things today.
Yeah,
in
so
one shape or form.
You've selected for the audience your favourites.
Favourites is too strong a word. It's a selection of letters from across the decades of the past. 75 years is because Cheltenham, as you know, is 75 years old this year, and that's why I was asked to do 75 years of letters.
Brilliant. So what about a highlight then, or as you say, highlights is a different word because they're not your favourites, they're just a selection of different themes and different sorts of things. I understand you've got a brilliant one there about someone who felt disgruntled about the rise of women in the workplace.
Yeah. This is a good. This is the post-war rise of women in the workplace. So a very disgruntled sort of Captain Mannering type commuter here. The headline was "Men Only," and it was published on December the 27th, 1958. Sir, businessmen living within a 50-mile radius of London are becoming exasperated by the fact that their daily rail journey to London on trains leaving their stations between the hours of 8:30 and 9:30 has become an ordeal. The coaches are invaded by ladies, with the result that businessmen holding season tickets are crowded out and forced to stand in the corridors. Which is the more important, that the regular workers should be able to read their newspapers and keep abreast of world affairs and arrive fresh for their business, or that the seats should be filled by women travelling to London to have their hair permed and to shop? The time has come when a certain number of seats, perhaps 25%, should be reserved for men only. The real solution would, of course, be for the railways to provide sufficient accommodation for everyone. Yours faithfully, EWD Tennant. Now, leaving aside the misogyny, overcrowding on the railways is obviously still very much. I'm hoping to get a seat back to London tonight, but who knows?
Oh my goodness, I'm laughing, but I shouldn't be, because there is, a lot of misogyny in that letter, and it's interesting because you said the themes stay the same, but one has to very much hope that someone wouldn't be writing now outraged about the amount of women on the train going to get their hair permed.
No, that was chosen for its humour and the overcrowding. The misogyny has gone.
Yes, well, almost.
Well, on a letters page it's gone, shall we say.
Okay, what about another brilliant one that I've heard you're going to be talking about, which is T.S. Eliot, in fact, writing
well,
in.
You've stolen the punchline, but T.S. Eliot, the poet, wrote an extraordinary letter in 1950, December the 20th, 1950, called The Television Habit. And it's possibly the earliest use of this phrase, not found it anywhere else. And that resonated with me today. The television, sir, in your issue of December 17, you announced that the BBC proposes to spend over £4 million over the next 3 years on the development of television. I have just returned from a visit to the United States, where television has become an habitual form of entertainment in many more households than here. Among persons of my own acquaintance, I found only anxiety and apprehension about the social effects of this pastime, and especially about its effect, mentally, physically, and morally, upon small children. Before we endeavour to popularise it still further in this country, might it not be as well if we investigated its consequences for American society and took counsel with informed American opinion about possible safeguards and limitations? The fears expressed by my American friends were not such as could be allayed by the provision of only superior and harmless programmes. They were concerned with the television habit, whatever the programme might be. T.S. Eliot, 24 Russell Square, WC1.
Quite extraordinary that he wrote in.
Well, that's not the only time he wrote in.
Really?
That's just probably the best of his letters.
Really? So he was a frequent...
Frequent's probably too infrequent, but regular.
Yeah. Gosh, fascinating. And what about your 70s letter regarding a certain festival?
Oh, this is a cracker. The Isle of Wight Pop Festival in 1970. There were three, I'm sure you know, three Isle of Wight Pop Festivals. 1970, I think, was the last of them. And it was massive. It was estimated that 700,000 people turned up, which is bigger than Woodstock. One thing we do bigger than the Yanks. Anyway, lots of responses. Oh, I've got to say, the lineup was incredible. Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, Moody Blues, The Who, Miles Davis, Joni Mitchell, Jethro Tull, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It's just a few.
Almost as good as the Cheltenham Festival lineup.
Very similar in many ways.
Yeah.
Three very short ones. Here's one from Mrs. E. Gunston. Sir, as a resident of the Isle of Wight, I would like to correct the impression that many readers of the national press must have got from reports on the Pop Festival. I was sitting on Desolation Hill from about 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. on both Saturday and Sunday, and at no time did I observe any violence, fornication, or unseemly behaviour of any sort anywhere. On the contrary, the gigantic crowd was remarkably well behaved, friendly, and generous. Moreover, a friend of my daughter who lost his wallet in the area containing £19 and his tickets recovered it the next day from the police. It had been handed in intact by one of those so-called undesirables of society. Elizabeth Gunston, Swains Road, Bembridge. Here's another one from Miss Sue Whittles. She says, Sir, much emphasis, as always, has been given to the sad minority who created damage and violence, and of the complaints of local residents who have caused a few days of disturbance. But no one has spoken of the wonderful and uplifting experience it was for everyone else. What actually happened was that for 5 days, all barriers of class, creed and nationality were totally ignored. People shared their food, money and possessions with complete strangers, and the natural reserve of the British was entirely forgotten. This strange and wonderful state of affairs was not only due to hippies, but to the vast majority who were students and ordinary working taxpayers. Slightly resonant with Starmer and his working people. But anyway, Sue Whittle. And this
a wonderful window onto history, isn't it?
It is. Can I just read you the third one? Because this is brilliant. This is called, the headline was Intruding Aircraft from Mr. R.V. Mobley. Sir, I was disgusted while attending the Isle of Wight Music Festival by constant flights over the site by helicopters and light aircraft. While the noise itself was not unpleasant, it seems a highly unnecessary intrusion when some 250,000 people were trying to listen to music. Yes, after all, this was a festival of music, not an exhibition for aerial photography by the national press. Yours sincerely, R.V. Mobley of Poole in Dorset.
Absolutely brilliant, and such a selection. I mean, from the complaints and the fury to the wonderfully optimistic one in the
you
middle there.
can't go wrong with train spotters, flight spotters. Anyway, far away.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, best of luck with your talk, and
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.